What's up, everybody? Thanks for joining the Glad's channel, the best horror channel here on YouTube. And today's going to be an awesome show. I got my buddy Andrew with me, and we're going to talk about the Nightmare on Elm Street remake. Do we love it? Do we hate it? Let's find out. All right, so one of the most polarizing horror movies in the community is the 2010 Nightmare on Elm Street. You either get people that absolutely love it or people that absolutely hate it, but the people are going to feel insanely intense about the movie one way or another. And a few years ago when I was here in Chicago at Flashback Weekend, my buddy Andrew and I were discussing it. He said he absolutely hated it. I'm one that I enjoy it, so we're kind of going to have a discussion about how we feel about it now. So what did you first think when you first saw it?
So going into it, it was a lot of things right off the bat that made it potentially good, but at the end of the day, made the demise of me not liking it whatsoever.
Okay.
I like the homages that they tied in from the original.
Okay.
And then they threw it in. But the problem that they did is they took a lot of what was done in the original and then just shoved it in. It's like, how much can we just shove in there?
Like what?
So for like instance, the scene in the original and the remake, you have Nancy in the bathtub and she falls asleep.
Yes.
In the original, you have the glove popping up famously, and then Nancy gets ripped down into this ocean abyss.
Mm-hmm.
While in the remake, it was just more like, all right, we got in there, good, see the glove, done, and next. Yeah. It was more like how much can they bring back what the original did and just shove in to pay homage to it, but without doing anything special for it. Because a lot of the things that I believe that the original did with their effects is they didn't have CGI.
Agreed.
And they had a budget.
Agreed. Yeah.
And so they made what they had work, and it worked really well.
Right, I can agree with that. The feel of the new one, the newer one, it doesn't have the same level of tension that the original did. Why I like the original is because I think Freddy Krueger's scarier. What happens in the later Nightmare on Elm Street original franchises, sequels, he gets more campy. And then New Nightmare, they brought him back and he was scary again, but that was like a one-off and it was pretty much dead from that point.
Yeah.
When they came out with this new one, you can tell that the director succeeded in making Freddy Krueger scary again, where he kind of lost some of that luster in the other movies.
Yeah.
And that was my main thing. For me, I just want to see if the villain is strong. If you're going to take a horror character, a horror villain like a Freddy Krueger, like a Michael Myers, like whoever, you need to make them a strong. I mean, that's a huge name to put on and try to tackle.
Right.
So it needs to be scarier.
The problem I see with the remake is they did just that, but then they stopped all of a sudden. It was like they did the amazing backdrop story, and they gave that to you through the flashback. But then when it comes down to, and then you got the main character, and like, I see pictures of me when the little, and how long did I know? So, and all of a sudden parents are like, nah, never happened. We don't know. We forgot. We may have pictures of you when you're little. It's in the act, but you just go to it. You're fine.
Yeah. Some of I will say, in a little bit to a detriment, some of the dream sequences, some of the stuff was a little campy and corny. Like the when they had the flashback of how he became or how they killed him, and like when he ripped off his jacket, it exposed his that to me was a little over the top. Like, we get your remake of Freddy Krueger, understood, great, leave it there.
Yeah.
But one thing that was lacking was the music as well. Yeah. The music in the first Nightmare on Elm Street set the scene. I'm a huge music person. I'm a huge person that, like, I love the scene to be elevated based on the sound that's happening. And the sound wasn't there in the same way that it was in the original one.
No, and that's sort of, like I said, a lot of things that I'm going to be saying that I like about this is the demise of the original. I absolutely hate it.
Mm-hmm.
And we had this conversation earlier about it. But, the visuals. The director started off as a music video director. And so he's perfect for visuals, especially the scene where he's in the classroom
and it poofs
and
to the next
poof,
one.
yeah, and now you're in Freddy's world. Now
Yeah.
the problem is like you said, is that's what he relied on. It was more visual. There was no set tone feel for the background
Yeah.
for music because he really didn't have it. It was
Yeah.
all visuals.
Yeah.
But then, again, it was like, how many times can we do it? And it got to a point where it's just reputation of just in, out, in, out.
Yeah.
Now, the remake does a good thing about the micro naps.
Yes.
Which makes sense of having
yes.
so much back and forth between real world sleep.
Right, and that was one of my things I really like about it. The micro naps, split scenes, like in the grocery store,
Yep.
when she was crawling, it was coming back and forth, like that was very, very well done. It felt like a big budget Nightmare on Elm Street, and the thing about Nightmare on Elm Street is it never had a big budget. None of them had a very big budget, so it felt I can understand why a person that loves the original would be turned off by the remake, because some of that, like, not I want to say indie feel, but some of that lower budget grittiness is what made the series that much better. So when we didn't get that, it was a little bit. I can definitely understand that being a bit of an issue.
Well, and then I don't mind CGI if done in moderate and proper use. Like I said, the visuals for it was amazing, especially going back to the class scene. That poof, was perfect. Now, but the thing also that I really have to split the difference is they didn't really use CGI on Robert Englund's face for Freddy.
No.
And majority of even the vocals in the remake were all CGI and edited.
That's true. Now, one of the things I love about the remake is the face of Freddy Krueger. So the face of Freddy Krueger looks like a burn victim in the remake versus the original. The original looks somewhat like when you take the cheese off a pizza. Like looks like that. Whereas it looks like an actual burn tissue, burn scars on the remake version. And since he was burned, that's a better presentation.
Right.
In that way.
And then that can go one or two ways. I really didn't like the look. To me, it looked like he was a burned alien versus actual more person. But like you said, depending on how bad and severe the burn is, you're going to have facial disfigurement.
Right.
It's not just pigmentation of the skin.
Right. Yeah, that's one of the things I like. And I also love Freddy Krueger because I thought they did a really good job with the one-liners that were, from his perspective, supposed to be funny, but they were horrific. And that's exactly what he was supposed to be from the beginning. And because he's always been a wisecracker, but it was wisecracking in the way of still being scary. Like we talked earlier, Nightmare on Elm Street 3 was the peak of that perfect marriage between him having the one-liners that were still scary and him still being scary. From 4 through 6, the one-liners became more and more campy. The fear of Freddy. I mean, Freddy ended up having music. He was in music videos. He had action figures. Like they were
video game.
Yeah, he was no longer. He was like this cool kid. And it's like you realize he kills children, right? Like you do realize that. Like he's got to be. We got to be afraid of this guy. And that whole fear was just gone. And I think 2020 or 2010's remake brought it back.
Well, see, and that's where it really flopped with me, is personality of what they did with Freddy. Now, we can't ignore that Freddy Krueger, outside being a child killer, he's a child molester. But in the original, the molestation was always in the background. That wasn't your main focus. That was, not saying any one of those between killing and molesting is any more horrifying. To which his own, but you didn't need to make the molestation the focal point. And they didn't. They made it, they hinted in the background.
Yes.
You can't escape that. But he was, at first, in the original, a child murderer. He killed the children. While in the remake, they were like, you know what? Let's shove that molestation part more foreground and hint more or less in the back. I mean, because in the flashback, you have him being a janitor. He sleeps in the boiler room of a kid's school. Like, part of me that screams, even if it was my kid having a kid, if I knew that a janitor was sleeping in my kid's preschool, that'd be a red flag of no. And then in this movie, they're like,
I completely agree with that. That is true. Now, I think if I had to enter the director's mind for a second, showing him as a scary child killer had been done to the best way it could be done. Between the original, New Nightmare, the other sequels, they told the story of Freddy Krueger in every way they possibly could. The remake needed something to make him a villain again. Because like we just talked about, he'd become more fan friendly. So there's not much more things to make a person a villain than a child molester. So I had a lot of people that I talked to that said, yes, it felt icky.
Yeah.
And it's not a good feeling. And I completely understand that. But from Freddy Krueger, at his core, is supposed to make you feel uncomfortable, supposed to make you feel afraid of him, and all the bad feelings you should be feeling when you watch him.
Yeah.
And I think that over the years of Nightmare on Elm Street, that feeling went away, man, and there was no longer a fear of Freddy Krueger.
Yeah.
And no longer the way to know who he really was. And I think it was needed. I could agree that it maybe didn't need to be so force-fed, but I think it was needed to still remember, hey, this guy's a bad guy. You know what I mean?
Yeah. No, I just think, it became too, like everything else, it was just redundant too much. It's like, we get it.
Yeah.
Even towards the end when they show the crawl space, we get it.
Right.
I mean, why do you gotta?
Right. Yeah. I guess looking hindsight, they did shove it down a lot.
And Robert Englund, I mean, he was redundant in a lot of as Freddy, or I shouldn't say Robert, but just that Freddy in that time. Redundance was kill count, one-liners.
Yeah. That's very true.
But unfortunately, like you said, as the years progressed and as the sequels came out, it became more of how many good one-liners can we throw with each kill?
Exactly.
Until he hit Freddy versus Jason. That was a different story, though.
Yeah, that's a whole different conversation. That is a whole different conversation. Yeah. So overall, I like the movie. I think that I understand. It's not perfect. So yeah, I would show this to anybody that had never seen a horror movie, the 2010 version, because it's more modern. You don't have the campiness of the original, and depending on the person's age, they may look at these like we used to look at like the silent films. Like they're great, but they're hard to appreciate and watch in this modern era. So that's why I would show the remake before showing the original.
Yeah, no. Unfortunately, I've already put my timestamp on the original, and the remake just doesn't live up to my expectation of a Elm Street fan.
So
has great things, visuals, but like I said, everything that I liked about the movie that I could say positively is the demise of why I absolutely hate this movie.
Yeah. So I just thought about it now. What did you think? Since you didn't like the movie, how bad was the bedroom scene to you?
See, again, it's when unnecessary CGI takes away from what was. I mean, not saying that CGI couldn't do it, but this particular thing, I mean, you got something where you had little money in the original, and you actually feel this, like, something's coming out of this wall, and that wall looks like it with the lighting and everything else perfect. Now, the CGI, now you got this weird blob, distorted thing, and all of a sudden, now it turns on form, you got Freddy, and then poof, I was like,
That was definitely the worst part of the movie for me. That, just to come out the wall, and the scene of the skin the cat scene. Yeah. Because she got thrown around like a pinball. It looked like I was watching like a cartoon.
A crappy Japanese fighting. She's getting thrown around the room and no control.
That part, those are the two biggest sins I feel like what they did to the movie.
And again, it was so much repetition of how much of the original can we throw in without using it too much.
Yeah.
Glove, bathtub, move on. Wall scene, CGI'd it. All right, well, that was done. Move on. The floating, you saw that in the last of the Nightmare on Elm Streets with Wes Craven's. And then you just kept on shoving it on, but it was all CGI'd. Agreed.
It
lost the homage of what the movie and the character is, but I agree with you. And if you absolutely have walked into this with no expectations, you had knew nothing about the character, you know, this is your first Elm Street, I guess you could say it's okay, but it's not for me.
Yeah. I mean, we talked about this last time too. I think sometimes horror fans, deep horror fans, self-sabotage things because it's like we always try to compare it to what it was as well as to appreciate it for what this is. Like, it's a new time. It's not Robert Englund. I get it, and there's a lot against it. Yeah. But if you can kind of, it's almost like Halloween 3.
Yeah.
Halloween 3 is so divisive because there's no Michael Myers. But when you look at the movie and forget about that point, it's actually a good movie. It's not perfect, but I mean that's a whole different story too. But all in all, I liked the remake. Andrew, not so much.
Yeah, I'd rather forget about it.
I want to know.
I'll move on. Like I told you, I respectfully, the first and last time I watched this was in theaters for 2010. I walked out annoyed and angry at myself for never being able to get that back, and then you brought me back to it.
Well, I'm glad I could do that.
But I'm leaving it in the back of the bus from now on.
Well, I appreciate that. So, what did you guys think? Have you seen it? Leave a comment in the video. Let me know what you guys thought about the remake. Good and bad. I love everything horror. If it's your first time with the channel, like, share, and subscribe. I do all things horror. This was the first one of this style, just a conversation, but I really enjoyed it. I want to do more of it. I do movie reviews, trailer reviews, top 10 list, anything horror. I love it. So see you guys next time, and definitely subscribe. All right,
peace.
Take care.